This is Marriage on the Half Shell, Ron Exposed. We're back.
Finally.
we didn't expect to take that long of a break, I don't think.
No. Nope.
But I think the last time we recorded, it was somewhere between Thanksgiving and Christmas of last year.
Right.
Yeah. So we just got we get super busy, and it seems like every weekend is packed from one end to the other.
That's true.
That's the way it's felt. So we're finally, I think things might be slowing down just a little bit.
Maybe. Well,
so
we'll do our best.
Yeah, we are going to do our best. That's all we can do. So, but we've had some ongoing discussions about some different topics that we could cover. And this one has come up recently because of some things that have happened around us, I think. And
I think so,
it's been something that we've discussed. Geez, it's been years and years and
Over
years.
the years.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have.
So this is we call this one church face, and we're going to explain that.
Yep.
It's not that complicated, but it's something that I think correlates to marriage and the way churches handle marriage and marital problems, which is kind of the direction that we want to go in, I think.
That's a big part of it, but I think once we explain it, it really applies to any situation.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Doesn't have to be related to church or anything like that. So you'll see.
All right. So what do we mean by church face? Well, it is the thing where you live your life during the week. Things are complicated. You might get in conflicts with your spouse. You might be fighting with your kids, just life stuff, right? But it's this thing where we get scrubbed up and dressed up and go to church, and we act like everything's perfect.
Right.
Right. And I think that that is happening far too often in far too many churches.
That's true.
Because church is supposed to be where you go to work things out with other fellow believers.
Yep.
Right? To help you walk through your life and figure out complicated things. And, that's what church is supposed to be. And what we've experienced is not that. And recently, it's been better, yes. But, so
we're not talking about a bunch of little nitpicky things that you and your spouse should be able to work out.
No.
Right? Because we went through all the Gottman stuff, and you're going to have issues, and you need to be able to work them out.
Yeah.
And that has to do with your maturity, and you get better as you do it.
Yeah.
Right? But these are things where, like we said, where you get scrubbed up and look perfect, but it's a big thing that's eating away, whether it's at your marriage or your parenting, or something like that.
Right. Or even your life
or
in
your
general.
own life.
Your own life.
Right.
So one example I can tell you, I listen to a lot of podcast stuff, and one of the people that I listened to said that he went, this was a long time ago, but he went to a men's group, and they were all sitting around and they were having a serious conversation, and the question came, does anyone have any sin, any particular thing that they're struggling with right now? And they went around the room, and all these guys were like, yeah, I'm struggling with my finances. I look at Facebook too much, that kind of thing. And then it came to him, and he went, I'm really struggling with porn. Like, that is a problem for me. And the whole thing came to a screeching halt, and they all looked at him and went, whoa, this is not the place for that. And he went, where am I supposed to go?
Yeah.
Then, I'm here to get support from other Christian men. I think this is something we all struggle with, right, guys? I mean, come on. But he was the only one who would admit it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe not. I mean, you got a bunch of men, so maybe they're not all struggling with exactly that thing, but maybe the temptation is there or whatever. But
yeah,
even if none of them struggle with it, the point is
they should all understand.
They should all understand and be ready to help him deal with it.
Yeah.
There should be accountability. How you doing with avoiding this sin?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It could be anything, right?
Right.
Not necessarily porn, but it could be anything.
Well, I mean, our own experience with it was the church that we belonged to 10, 15 years ago or whatever it was. I mean, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know about my issues. I had a lot of issues, and I had a lot of anxiety and depression and things like that I struggled with.
Yep.
And this church that we were going to was not helpful in the least. Not even a little bit.
Right. Describe this.
Well, I
would,
I would try to go to mostly other women for help. And all I ever heard was the church coded language about how it's all just on you. This is your sin. You need to deal with it. Don't look at anything else. Don't look at anyone else. It's just you.
Right.
And that's all I ever heard. And while that is true in one sense, because it is my responsibility, it turns out there was some trauma, childhood trauma, that was completely unresolved, and that was it put me in a bad cycle.
Yeah.
Where I just kept handling things the wrong way and handling things and over again. And I eventually reached a point where I was taking benzos and a sleeping pill, and then I started drinking too. But the thing is, I took the benzos for
10 years.
10 years, and a big part of that was while I was in that church, and no one in that church ever knew because I couldn't tell them. The shame.
Right.
Of having to take anything to deal with any kind of anxiety or issues or whatever. It just wasn't something that I was going to pile on top of everything else that I was already dealing with.
Yeah.
So the idea here is I would have to get up on Sunday morning, get all 6 of my children ready, scrub myself, and I would literally have to put a different face on when I walked in the building.
Right.
Like I had to be the best mom, and I had to be the best wife, and I had to be smiling, and I had to be put together every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
But the minute I walked out of church, it was gone. It was gone.
And you couldn't get, I think the big takeaway is, like they would say, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
What's the sin here? So say it was an anger problem, for instance, because there's a verse about that.
Right.
So the verse is basically, you can be angry, but don't sin in your anger.
Right.
Right? So the Bible never says, don't be angry.
Right.
Or that anger itself is a sin. It's what you do with it. And so, yes, that part you're responsible for. Right?
Right.
But what is underneath that anger is where the church would say, we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah. I literally was not allowed to.
Yeah. Or the anxiety, like you said. Like, we're not going to talk about what might be driving that.
Yeah.
Right. And they were right. We've talked about this before. They were right in a sense about therapists and psychiatrists and things like that. So where I guess, today, to be honest, if you got to be very discerning about your therapist, right?
Yeah.
If you go to them and they're the type that just affirms what you're saying and doesn't challenge you, and says, if they don't say, that's wrong,
Mm-hmm.
Let's figure out what's underneath it.
Right.
Right. That's what a therapist should do.
Right.
But they don't. So it's almost like they had the right idea, but they couldn't get underneath and couldn't help with, why are you feeling this way? Why does this happen?
Yeah.
What
I was in a very obvious pattern. There was a pattern in my behavior, and I did not know why. I could not figure it out.
Right. So so I don't want to make this whole make this whole thing about the failure of the church there, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
But the cause was that you had to go to church and act like everything was great.
Yes. Yeah.
And your kids had better act great too.
Yeah. Yeah. And there were a couple of them that did not appreciate that either.
Our kids. And we watched other families in that same church.
Yes.
Once their kids turned 18 and
got
out of there, they were like, we're out of here.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if they had been allowed to express the things that they need and gotten the counseling, coaching that they needed, if you had gotten the coaching that you needed to discover what's really going on, you're not trying to say the thing that I do is somebody else's fault.
No.
Right?
That's not what I was saying. Yeah.
Right? But that's the way the church looked at it.
Yeah.
It's like we're trying to, say there's something underneath that drives it. And we all know that trauma can do that.
Yeah.
PTSD.
Right.
Those sorts of things. That rewire your brain. I mean, it's all shown now in science. That doesn't mean I'll be clear and I'll get off the subject, but as a Christian, that doesn't mean it's an excuse to sin, to do wrong things.
No, and I knew that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not what I was trying to do. Yeah.
It was very frustrating. Anyway, so
that's the experience. Okay, so that's, and there's there's obviously a version of this where wherever you show up, say you show up at your job, right? And you have to pull yourself together to do your job.
Right.
Right. And then if you are a mom, you got to get up every morning, pull yourself together and be there for your kids. Right.
Right.
So so there is a version of this where you put on different hats or you put on different faces, so to speak, depending on where you are. But I'm talking about, this is almost another level of, is it hypocrisy?
Well,
I think it can lean that way.
I think there are psychologists, psychiatrists who say we put on different masks based on where we are.
Yeah.
And we kind of get that.
Right.
It's not wrong. Like you put on a more professional face for work, you put on a parent face for your kids, you put on, and that's, in a sense, it's okay, but we're talking about where you are hiding serious issues.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Yes.
Right. So, I knew a guy that worked with, it was a long time ago, but worked with him, and he had a serious gambling problem, but he would come to work and he would put on his professional face.
Yeah.
And then after work, he would go to the casino and gamble away his money. And it's like, you got a wife and kids, man, at home.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Right. And there was no dealing with it. Right. He just put on the right face.
Yeah.
So so we're talking about serious issues.
Right.
I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah. And I think, we want to, obviously, this is a marriage podcast, so we're trying to correlate it to that. We've already discussed the divorce statistics in the church, and it's outrageous.
Well, the divorce rate in the church is the same as not in, people who aren't in the church.
Yes.
It's the same rate. It's like, what's going on?
But why? I think this may be part of the reason why.
Yeah. I mean, we all experience the same thing.
Yeah.
And we've tried not to make this podcast too Christian-y, right?
Right.
But we all experience the same thing as human beings.
Yes.
And so Christians in the church can't go to somebody they don't feel like they can go to somebody for help. And
right.
people outside of the church don't feel like they can go to somebody for help. And people, I think we hide our problems from our friends, from our parents, from our kids, and we probably should do more of that, but we hide them.
Yeah.
We don't get the help we need.
Right.
If we have issues, and so related to marriage, there's a couple that we know that, the wife has been like kind of checking out for the past 10 years.
And nobody knew.
Nobody knew. And
she just dropped a bomb.
Yeah, she just dropped the bomb. And it's kind of like the husband's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And part of the issue is maybe she didn't feel supported. I'm not saying it was all her fault. All I'm saying
we don't know.
We just don't
know.
But we know that it's been 10 years and now she's kind of given up. And why is that? It's like, well, because they've been in the church. So maybe they didn't feel like there was anything they could do.
Yeah, they didn't feel like there's anyone that they could go to get help. I don't think she felt like I know we're speculating now, but I don't think she felt like there was any other women in the church she could go to and say, I'm having these feelings or I'm having these problems and, how do we fix this? I think it sounds like, she nursed it along and like you said, she checked out a long time ago. And we actually, we saw them together right before the announcement was made. Yeah. And we sensed nothing.
That's the weird thing. You could look at them and it's like, you couldn't tell.
No, they have 3 beautiful girls and they're older. So I just, it looked like a nice family, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And it kind of broke our hearts because this is exactly what we're talking about. If you're a Christian and you're part of a church community, that church community should be the place that you can go to when you're having problems.
Right.
And we feel that there are too many Christians and Christian couples who put on church face and they don't feel like there's anywhere to go.
Right.
To help them, right? There's no way I could have gone to my church, quote unquote, family and said, I am addicted to Xanax. I would like to get off, but I'm dealing with too much. I need help. I couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
They would have expelled us even sooner than they already did. They
didn't expel us. We left.
Well, they were more or less pushing us out when we left. It was kind of inevitable.
Yes. And it was one of those things where I won't go into other things that happened, but yes. So there's part of it where people just feel like there's nothing they can do, and then there's part of it where the church simply does put up its hand and say, "Oh, we don't talk about that here."
Yes.
So where are we supposed to talk about it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's the guy I was talking about where he felt like I'm finally in a place where I can get some help with this issue that I'm having. And the response he got was, whoa, we don't talk about that here.
Right.
What?
You should never hear that.
No.
From
no.
Church.
No.
Church especially. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Even though you may be doing something that's very wrong.
Right.
Such as pornography use.
Yeah.
In that guy's case. Right? You shouldn't feel judgment. There's discernment. There's a different type of judgment that's like, hey, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And then there's the judgment of, oh, you're a terrible sinner, get out of our church. That's not what you should feel ever. That you shouldn't have the raised eyebrow or the gasp.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, you listen to Coldplay instead of Christian worship songs.
That was a whole other story. That was a whole other story that happened.
That shouldn't happen, right? Someone should say, how can we help you?
Yes.
You know it's wrong. You're telling us that you're doing it, right? So you know it's wrong. How can we help you?
Yes.
What can we do to check in with you, to keep you accountable, to encourage you, maybe find out what's underneath, right?
Yeah.
Why did you feel like you had that temptation? Why did you need to go use that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What's going on in your marriage?
Yeah.
Right? How can we help there? And that's what I think that's really all we're getting at is, especially in the church, but in any friend group, right? You should be able to go to your friends and say, I need help with something.
You need to be discerning about which friends you
Absolutely.
share which stuff, you know?
Yeah. But your church friends, well, so you have acquaintances in the church, just like you have acquaintances anywhere else.
Right.
So, there's some people in the church you wouldn't expose that sin, for instance.
Yeah, you need to figure out who you can.
But there are people you're really
going
close
to help you.
Who's going to help you?
Yes.
That's what men's groups are for, or women's groups.
Yeah.
Where you don't just sit around and yak and eat meat, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but the discussion should get serious.
Right.
And you should feel like you can say something without, it's going to be a little embarrassing, but without the judgment.
Right.
And you're going to have help.
Right. I mean, that is something that I think I appreciate about the church that we're currently going to is when we started going, I had decided that I was done with this.
Done with church?
The church, I was almost there. I got really close to that one.
Organized religion, I think.
Yeah. I think I'd had enough.
Rather just have a home church.
Yes, I would actually. But I decided that following your lead, we were going to attend this small church that we're currently going to now. But the one thing that I made clear to you was that I was not going to play this game anymore. Well, I'm going to walk in there and I'm going to be me.
Yep.
And they will either accept it or reject it. And I don't really care. I'm done faking, I'm done putting on church face.
Yeah.
If I'm having a problem, then I'm going to find somebody and talk to them about it. But I also am blunt. I don't play around. I don't like nonsense. I don't like gossip. I don't gossip. I don't do any of that stuff. Right. And that stuff we've experienced in other churches, for crying out loud.
Yes.
Particularly with women. So I'm just saying it. And I was not going to do that anymore. So I literally, the first time we went to this church, I was dressed nicely, but all my tattoos are showing. It's like, how are you going to do that? How are you going to handle this?
Yep.
Because I'm not done. I like tattoos, and I'm probably going to get a couple more.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that my son was already attending there, he kind of warned him. My mom, does not mess around. She's very blunt. She just speaks the truth. She doesn't put up with nonsense. I think he had kind of given them a heads up a little bit.
Well, when I met with two of the pastors when we first started attending, before we'd officially joined.
Yeah.
And I was blunt as well, saying we're not here for a rock concert and a TED Talk, right?
Yeah.
We're not here for that.
Yeah.
We want teaching, and they were like, we see that.
Yeah.
And so far it's been pretty good.
Yeah.
So, and we're trying to be involved.
Yeah, I mean, as involved as we.
Well,
we've kind of put some limitations on that at this point in our lives because we do have a lot of grandchildren and children, and all of that comes first, and my parents and things like that. That all comes first.
Right. So, but we do, we do this. We serve in the church. We've got our started a marriage group.
Right.
I serve on a security team, for instance, or whatever.
Yeah.
So we're doing things with the church. We go to the meetings, but not all of them.
Right.
We go to the group outside of church, where you have the same group of people, and that should become, well, that if we had a marriage issue, I guess, that would be the place that we should be able to go.
Yes, absolutely.
So you have to develop some deep friendships for that. And maybe it's not necessarily the whole group, hey, I've got an announcement, but but someone. Yeah. Or you could go to one or two of the guys or the couples. Right. And say, look, we're having this problem. Yeah. Right? And we just need some help through it. Because sometimes you can't see the problem objectively because you're too close to it. Yeah. So, that sort of thing. And then the accountability and all that. So instead of putting on the church face where you say, everything's great.
Yes, there's far too much of that going on, I believe, in the church. Yeah. Universally, I think that there's too much of that. Far too many people are faking. It's kind of like the whole influencer thing, where you see the polished up version of whoever it is or whatever it is that you're looking at. Mm-hmm. But, that person's life is a train wreck.
Right.
Behind the scenes, you know what I mean? Yeah. You're seeing the makeup and the hair and the filters, the 10th take, whatever it is, the edited. You're seeing the edited version of people's lives, and I don't think that's how we're supposed to go to church. Right. I think we're supposed to go to church unedited.
Yes.
That's true. This is who I am all the time, and I know that I kind of, that's like my life right now. It's like if you encounter me in the gym, you're probably going to encounter the same person at church. Maybe a little saltier, maybe a few more swear words here and there, but basically I'm the same person, Right. It makes my life easier. I don't have to pretend to be
yourself. Okay, so
but as far as okay, so bring it back to how do we correlate? I think we've already kind of discussed it, but how do we correlate this to marriage? Right. There's too many marriages in the church, too many people who are married and miserable, or married and having issues, and they do this. They just go to church and pretend that everything's okay for that 2 hours or whatever it is, and then the minute they walk out of church, they're just miserable again. Right. And this is why, one of the many, many reasons why the divorce rate in the church is so high. Yeah.
So, all we're saying at this point is, as Christians talking about marriage, if you're in church, and you should feel that way, where you could find somebody to talk about the issues that you're having. And if there is just no one who will do that for you, then you should find another church. Doesn't mean that the church universal is bad. It just means where you are. Right. Maybe they're not mature enough. I mean, we've seen so many churches these days, especially in the United States, just go off the rails completely and ignore big parts of Scripture because they'd rather go with the culture. Right. But they're focused on that, and they're not focused on helping the people in the church. Right. Right. So I'll be clear. Like, people who are Christians, they don't go to church because they're perfect. No, they're not perfect. They realize that they're imperfect, and they've offended God with their sin and all of that. And so they repent. accept Christ as the Savior, and realize that the only way to be saved and be right with God is to be saved, to believe that Jesus was the Son of God and that he died for our sins and then rose again. And then we go to church to learn and to interact with other people who believe that thing, that same thing, and realize that, we're still imperfect. We still have problems in our lives, but now we've got this group of people, and we're right with God. God is there, ready to help us as long as we're ready to also do the work.
Right.
And that's what that's what it is. And you should not have to put on a special church face to go to church and act perfect.
Right.
And to relate the same thing to marriage outside of, if you're not a Christian, really look into it. But if you're not at this point, it still should be something that you should be able to do, where you can go find someone who can help you, a mentor or somebody that you know who's got a really good marriage, for instance, just somebody who's got a good marriage that that you can go say, here's the problem we're having. Can you help us? And chances are they've been through the same problem.
Nothing new under the sun.
Yeah. Yeah. And they can help you.
Right.
So that's really all we're saying here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's about all I've got to say.
So yes, this one's going to be on the shorter side. We usually do closer to an hour, but this was just something that we've been talking about for a long time, and we just felt like needed to be discussed. We really want to help other married couples not struggle secretly with whatever they're struggling with, but you need to, if you need help, then get it.
Yeah.
Get it. But put your pride down.
Yeah.
That's a big part of this, actually, is you've got to swallow your pride and admit that you've made mistakes, that she's made mistakes, that your marriage is coming unraveled. And that's a hard thing to admit, I know.
But it's better than letting your marriage come unraveled.
Yes.
Right? You go for so long, and the longer you wait, the harder it is.
Yes, because the more complex the problems become, they just kind of,
and the more resentment builds up and all that stuff. And just like, so no matter where you are, if you're listening to this, no matter where you are in your marriage and how long the problems have been going on,
right,
you've got to start now to go get some help to swallow your pride, like you said, and get help, and just be totally honest. Right? You can't just give your edited version of the story either. You've got to be brutally honest about.
This is not Instagram. Don't do that.
Yeah. Be brutally honest about their part and about your part, and then let them do the same thing, because they're going to have a different perspective of it.
Right.
And you both have to be open to hearing it, but find somebody who can listen to all of that and help you walk through it.
Yeah.
And make things better.
Right.
So, and if you think if your marriage is going great, then that's great too. Still be brutally honest.
Well, also, if your marriage is going great,
you could help someone else.
You can help someone else.
Yeah. If you've been married long enough to have experienced some issues.
Yes.
Then sure.
Yeah.
You don't have to be perfect either.
Yeah.
To help someone. We're not perfect still. But we've had enough experience that we think we can at least throw out some advice.
Okay. Right. So yeah, I think we've adequately covered it. So all we're saying is show up to church as who you actually are. Don't pretend to be someone else. Don't pretend that everything is perfect if it's not. And find people to help you if you need it. That's what we're saying.
Right.
Right.
And that's it.
Okay. This has been Marriage on the Half Shell. Ron Exposed. Have a good evening.